Hi everyone, Brian here from the Witch Doctor series. I'm going to do a segment today on wind flags. A very invaluable tool when you're at a shooting match, target shooting. Helps you determine the wind direction, intensity. Very valuable tool for just about any shooter who's doing things like shooting matches, target shooting. Probably not good for something like hunting, but definitely great, when you're on the range. Very useful tool. So let's go over the wind flags today. I brought out a couple different types of flags. These just so happen to be Rick Graham flags. There's a number of different good vendors out there, so definitely a lot of good choices to choose from. I would go with a very reputable vendor. They have a lot of experience with flags, types, how to balance them, what materials to use, etc. So go with a reputable vendor. Order early. These things could be in pretty high demand, and so it may take some time to get them. If you're getting them used, take a good look at them, make sure they're in really good condition and they function properly. So let's go over the flags themselves. So this right here is a standard wind flag. This right here tells us that the maybe the wind is oriented in the right hand direction, and this area here will signify a left hand direction. Notice how we have color coding on them for right, green for right, and orange for left. I also added an arrow sticker on mine. I like the arrow stickers because I'm more oriented towards shapes of objects than I am color. So it's better for me to have a sticker on there that signifies direction. This right here is sort of standard survey tape. And so the flag itself, this part signifies right or left. And then the survey tape helps you understand wind intensity. So if the tape is oriented, let's say it's swirling around a little bit like this, that tells you, yeah, it's probably a 1 to 2 mile per hour wind. If it starts getting pretty high and swirling a lot, that can tell you, 2 to 4 miles an hour. And so just depending on the angle, will give you a good indication of the wind intensity. So here you have wind direction, and here you have wind intensity. Right now it's not very windy on the range, so unfortunately we're not going to get a really good live sample of wind. But when you take the flags out, you'll start understanding the intensity. One other thing I do recommend is when you do have wind flags, take a Kestrel or some sort of wind meter out with you, so that when you see the flag at, let's say, about a 45 or 30 degree angle, you can understand, okay, the wind is going 5 miles per hour, or you see it barely dangling and moving a little bit and you're seeing a 2 mile per hour wind. That'll give you a sense for the intensity indication of this ribbon. Okay, and this is a flagpole here, a tripod. These are usually for photography, but they are great to have for your wind flags. The flag itself connects to a pole on here, and it rotates in different directions. The flag poles, the size of them is going to vary based on your needs. So you may need some poles that can go really high, up to 10, 12 feet. You may need a lot of poles that go very low, that go 2 feet. It all depends on your range and where you're going to set those flags. So I have a number of different poles. My range just so happens to have kind of a mixture. I have like two 2-foot poles, and I think 4 6-feet poles, and 2 8-feet poles, and then 2 10-foot poles. That's what my range requires for short range bench rest at 100 and 200 yards shooting. So I have to have kind of a mixture of them. I also have stakes. So these are tripods, but in some circumstances, especially the benches to the far left and far right, there's berms to the left and to the right in the range contour, and so you can't actually set up a tripod in those areas. So I actually have some stakes that just plop straight into the ground there, and then you put the flag on top, and they're able to go on berms without having any angle issues. With these types of flags, you definitely want them straight. You don't want it canted at all, because if it's canted, it's not going to pick up the wind as good, and it's going to give you a very poor indication of wind. You'll get some indication, but it's not going to be very accurate. Let's look at this one. This is an interesting flag. This is called an up-down flag. I like to call it the uppy-downy. And it gives you an indication of whether you're getting an updraft or a downdraft. If you look at this range is much like the range that I shoot short-range bench rest on. There are baffles. Sometimes the wind comes in, hits the baffle, and then creates a downdraft. So I see that a lot. So I will put an up and down in terms of where I put it in the field, right below the baffles. Sometimes the wind comes from behind and lifts up, and then you get an updraft. Basically, when I use up and down flags, if they're going too high up or too low down, that to me is what I call a go, no-go signal. If it's up or down, that's a no-go. I'm not going to shoot, because that up or down draft is going to adversely affect my shot. The shot will definitely go too high in the group or too low. I usually wait until the up-down flag is really level and not showing a lot of change. Okay, the setup, once again, how you set them up depends on your range. So make sure you get your tripod heights correct. Make sure that your flags clear these little screws, screws that adjust the up and down of the flag. So for example, here you can see this flag is binding up on this one. So what I'll do is I'll make sure we get that loosened up and brought up to a point where it doesn't bind up with anything. You want this flag to be able to move in a 360-degree manner without getting bound up at all. Another thing is you have to watch out. Here's a great example here. You don't want your tape touching the ground or in any way binding up with any grass or anything else on the ground. So you want to make sure that you have zero binding, both at the base of the tripod and with the ground and any grass that may be on the ground. Here, this is too low. This could bind up against this piece of grass. So I would actually be raising this up a little bit to make sure that it clears completely. Make sure that that survey tape does not touch the ground or get bound up. In terms of taking care of your flags, basically just make sure that they're clean, make sure that they're in good condition. I always just do a quick test. The 360 test is what I call it. I check the survey tape. You can feel it. It would be really hard if it's getting old and it would need replacement. This one here I can easily, it moves really well, so this is actually still in good shape. But if it was very hard and kind of cracking or extremely difficult to bend, I would definitely replace it. Okay, and then if you're in wet conditions, my recommendation is just prior to the match, go dry off your flags, because when they're wet, that impacts their sensitivity. Check your rules for if you're using flags in a match. Check the rules, because there may be rules in your match that says, hey, you can't go out and touch the flags after you set them up. So always check your rules to make sure you're not violating a flag rule. There's also other rules about the height of them, that they can't be so high that they cover your target. So always check the rules for sure to make sure you're doing everything correctly. In terms of general setup, it's always good to have them lined up with your target so that you get a good indication of the wind at your target. If I'm in a match and I have to have them set below the target, I'll have them lined up perfectly with the target. I'll get behind the scope, call someone on their cell phone. That person will go out and make sure my flags are all lined up, and I just basically line them up with the bottom crosshair of my scope. If you're shooting just target shooting and you're not in a match, I do recommend possibly setting them a little bit higher than in a match. In a match, you have those height requirements that you have to keep them below the target, but when you're target shooting, you could bring them up so that you get a really solid indication of the wind at the bullet flight path. But if you do bring them up, make sure that you offset them to just slightly to the right or the left so you don't actually shoot a hole in them. So what I do is when I'm target shooting and I'm not concerned about height requirements, I will go out and set them so that the edge of the flag is roughly 6 inches to 8 inches from my target, but it's high enough to where it gives me the wind indication at the bullet flight path. And then I'm careful at that point to make sure I have a good zero. I'm not gonna have a 8-inch errant shot that's gonna hit my my flag. And I keep an eye on those flags throughout the duration of my shooting string. Helps me understand, again, the direction and intensity, and it will absolutely help you understand the impact of wind on your shooting. A good tuned rifle, you can shoot in wind conditions. All right, let's show you a target where we actually shot in wind conditions. And this right here is called the Cider Target, as the S is here to signify cider. My first shot in this match was on the on the cider here, but on the larger portion of the Cider Target. And that was a foul shot. I normally shoot 1 to 2 foul shots depending on the barrel. This barrel was good with 1 foul shot. And I think the conditions were slightly left. I had a little bit of orange on the flag showing, with the arrow showing left. Very subtle intensity. The survey tape was probably about 15 degrees out and swirling just a little bit, so I estimated about a 1 to 2 mile an hour left wind. You can see the shot did go a little bit left, and then it picked up a little bit. I got about 20 degrees on a number of the flags, 20 degrees left on a number of flags. I had 8 flags out. I think about 6 of them were showing left, and I went down to the left cider, shot a 3-shot group, and you can see it was off to the left a little bit, so clearly the wind was pushing it a little bit. Very subtle wind effect, again, probably somewhere 2-3 mile an hour range, possibly 4, but grouping well. And then the flags died down. I think I had maybe 1 flag going a little bit left, a 15-degree angle, and I fired another 3-shot group to see how am I doing in that condition. So I thought, okay, good, I can shoot in the left condition and do pretty well. And then we went up at that point. Time was running out. You only have about 7 minutes in a short-range bench rest match to fire your 5-shot group. And the left condition was persisting. It wasn't stopping, wasn't slowing down. So I figured, okay, now I'm going to shoot in the left condition and go up to my record target, and fired all 5 in that left condition. Again, it was probably about a 2 to 3 mile an hour left condition, and shot a .150 group in that left condition, and did pretty well. I think I won that match. But this shows you that the flags just aren't there to just wait until they die down and shoot in perfect conditions. The flags are there to tell you too, using your cider, how well am I doing in a particular condition. And typically I will shoot on the left cider in the left condition and the right cider in a right condition. That's just easy for me to remember when I need to, if I need to reference my cider target for where I landed. I'll shoot left condition, right condition. In this case, it was left condition, 2 to 4 mile an hour. In this case, it was left condition ever so slightly. And you can see both were offset to the left a little bit. And then shooting in the anywhere from 2 to 4 mile an hour condition, it settled to the left. One thing I do recommend, this was my first match of the day, so I didn't have my zero set perfectly, but I do recommend shooting your groups on one of these black lines, not in between them, so that your group is not touching a black line. You want your group completely inside a black line so that there's white all around it. What that does is when they go to score it, you won't get any interference with the lines in them determining where were the outer parts of your hole. So I think in the next match I did adjust. I think I went 1/8 click down. That way my groups wind up right in the middle here of a line.